right, hello everybody. So it is Sunday, February 14th, actually. Happy Valentine's Day. But it is time for my weekly book wrap up, and I actually read a lot this week. I have been really, stressing because I have a new book buying restriction situation. It's the book wall shrinkage attempt number 2. And so I've been reading a lot, and also it did not hurt that all of these books were around 300 pages, so that is very quick. But first up, I read one book that I actually do not have on me. It's one that I don't own, and that is What School Could Be by Ted Dintersmith. I had to read this for professional development for my job, and it's about this. It's a nonfiction book. This guy went around to a bunch of different schools in America, and try to figure out like what they're doing differently, what they're doing that's really helping kids be more prepared for the real world. And it's okay, there's still a very heavy I don't know. It's just, this might sound weird and stupid, but who says that everything has to be useful? I don't know. I feel like just basing everything so extremely on utility just seems stupid to me. There's so many things that aren't useful that we do and love all the time, and it's just not everything has to have a reason for being. And it's just, I don't know. But it was okay. Again, like I said, it was all right. And it is a conversation that needs to be had, the why, because schools are, very, especially I think the biggest problem is the fact that schools are very much standardized, and the entire country is not the same. So I don't know. I think I gave it 3 stars. I don't remember. But again, it's just, everybody's so focused on the STEM and the usefulness, and it's just calm down a little bit. Then I read a Fredrik Backman book. I love Fredrik Backman. If you were around a couple years ago, Beartown consumed my life. But I read Anxious People, which is, I believe, his newest book. This came out last year. It was my very first book of the month, actually, so I finally read that. But this is the story of a bank robbery gone wrong, is what they say. But it's basically what happens is that somebody tries to hold up a bank. It's a cashless bank, so they run across the street and they stumble into an apartment building, and then it turns into a hostage situation. And what this book does is it really goes into detail of all the people in the hostage situation, the bank robber, the cops working the case, and it's just kind of, it is a very much a mystery in how exactly everything went down, because what happened now when the cops stormed is that the bank robber was gone. And they didn't really know where they went and everything like that. I really enjoyed it. Fredrik Backman is, I think, he's just one of the best writers out there right now, and I just absolutely adore everything he writes. I finished reading this book during a reading day for the 8th graders, and if I had not been sitting in front of a room full of 8th graders, I would have bawled my eyes out. There's just so much in here that's just being said about just life and happiness and everything, and I just adore it so much. I just like it so much, man. It's just a fantastic book, and I really very much enjoyed it. I think that, I don't know if it's the right one to start with. I started with Beartown, and that was a fantastic idea. But I have heard some people, because some of these characters are a little bit iffy, but you do really grow to love them. You just start to really care about them as the people that they are, and I'm tearing up a little bit thinking about it. It's fantastic. Then I read one of my Goodreads giveaways books that if you've been around for a while, I win a lot of books from Goodreads. I've stopped entering them, by the way, but I have won a lot of books from Goodreads, and I take years to read them. So I've got 2 of those in this stack, and this one is actually only a year old. That is this Arc of Boys and Sex by Peggy Orenstein. This came out in January of 2020, so it's just a little bit over a year old. And this is a nonfiction book where this woman went around and talked to a lot of young adult men, around the ages between teenager to young to early 20s, about how the culture around sex has affected them in their lives. Talked about porn, talked about hookup culture, talked about dating apps, and it was really interesting. She wrote a different book called Girls and Sex, which kind of is the same idea but with young women. And I honestly, after reading this one, I'm very much interested in reading more for nonfiction. She seems to be pretty sex focused, where she's talking a lot about sex and the implications and the effects it has on our lives. And so this was really interesting. I did enjoy reading it, and I will say this is an ARC, and the printing got real fucked up in the middle at one point. But it's an ARC, so I don't take that against it because this isn't a final copy or anything. But Yeah, no, I will say it did make me a little bit leery over some things because it's like there are some things in here where it's like that's legitimately fucking awful. Like some things, like some of the porn that some of these kids said that they watched was just like gross. Like I've never been into porn. I don't really understand. I guess I can't. I guess I understand the concept, but I've never really understood the appeal. And just some of the stuff that they were talking about in here was just absolutely disgusting. Like I don't know, but it was an interesting one. I did enjoy reading it. I think I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars. Yeah, it was fun, and I did add like all of her other books to my thrift books wish list, so that's pretty cool. Then I read another arc that I went from Goodreads. This one is quite a bit older. This one came out in May of 2018. And this may very well be my least favorite book of the year so far. That is Smothered by Autumn Chiklis. So this is the story of a girl. I guess she's like a young adult. She has just graduated from college, and so she moves home with her mega rich, mega overbearing family. She's got a younger sister who is a senior in high school, and then her 2 parents. And her mother is like extremely overbearing, like has like stalking apps on their phones, and like so this girl she's trying to figure out how to get a job, where to get a job, and B, trying to figure out how to tell her mother that she has a boyfriend because her mother always chases off her boyfriends. And I did not like this at all. And a lot of people have had problems with this book because, I mean, none of the characters are like good. Like who did I like? Her dad was all right. There were some legitimately funny moments in here. I will say my favorite part of this book was there's a parasite subplot that is hilarious. Like it is so funny. It's like this extended joke, and it is hilarious. Like major props to the author for that one. But the thing is, I mean, this woman is extremely overbearing. The mother is, and like my mother can be a lot sometimes, but she is like this woman is just like a borderline abusive with her overbearingness and very controlling, and it's just like it's played off as like a joke, and the main character doesn't do anything to stand up for herself ever. Also, she applies for like 2 jobs. Oh, this book takes us over 6 months. She is just the entire time unemployed and whining. It is an awful book. I just hated, especially the mom and the main character were awful. Like I liked pretty much everybody else. Like Theo was good. The dad had some funny bits too. The younger sister was more of an adult than she was, and it made me mad. It was an awful book. I gave it 2 stars. It wasn't like the worst. Like my 1 stars are reserved for like Mercy by Jodi Picoult, but it was not good. Then I finished listening to the audiobook of Silence of the Lambs. This is the abridged version. It is actually narrated by Kathy Bates, so that's super fun. But this is, if you did not know for some reason, this is a Hannibal Lecter story. It was made into a very popular movie in the early 90s, and that movie remains, I think, one of the best horror thriller movies ever made. Listening to this, it is on audio cassette. Listening to this, I am just like kind of astounded by how direct the movie is from the book. Like it is amazingly similar to the book, and I really like that. I did kind of know exactly what was going to happen, obviously, because I've seen the movie, but it was very interesting, and it was narrated really well, and I do want to read this book, actually physically read it in a complete version, not just the abridged version, but yeah, no, it was definitely a lot of fun. I think I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It was a good time. Then I read another book of the month book. This was my December book pick, and that is People Like Her by Ellery Lloyd. This is a thriller about a Instagram mom kind of influencer, and her kind of there is a kind of a deranged former fan, and it's most of this woman's marriage and friendships are crumbling because she is extremely business minded. I enjoyed it. It did give me, not to compare it too much to Big Little Lies, but it gave me more of that kind of vibe where it was there was a lot of like gossipy stuff in there, and like it wasn't like there was obviously the thriller aspects to it. Like there are a lot of like italicized portions in here, which would like that implies that's the villain. But really, you know, everybody but the kids in Doreen is the villain. So I don't know, it was very, very interesting. It was a lot of fun. There wasn't, I don't know if there was that much substance there. It did say a lot about, what, like, how kind of awful some of these Instagram moms are. Like, don't, like, sharing so much about their kids when their kids definitely cannot consent to any of that is, like, awful, and it happens all the time. So that was cool. But I enjoyed it. It was an enjoyable book. Overall, I think I ended up giving it like 3 out of 5 stars. It was very enjoyable. But it's not going to be one of my new favorites. I've been reading a lot of thrillers lately, and this one is kind of lower par, but it was definitely very, very easy, quick, fast, fun to read. So these, plus I guess What School Could Be, or the books I read this past week. That is all for today. I will talk to you later, and goodbye.